Hello, and welcome back to our podcast. This is Molly from Black Dirt Homestead joining and co-hosting Letta on the Roots and Dirt podcast. Today I'll be sharing why my husband and I decided to homestead, what and why it's important to us, and what keeps us from going back to the lifestyle we were once living. So why did we decide to live the lifestyle we're living now? Homesteading in rural Minnesota, attempting to raise our own family off a roughly 7-acre farm, raising, growing, harvesting as much as we can ourselves, as well as source locally if possible. We decided to live this lifestyle because it's part of our roots. As my husband would say, it's in our DNA ever since we were little. It's something we grew up around and we enjoy greatly. We've both been people that enjoy staying busy and working on projects. It's something that has now become a full passion of both of ours ever since we moved out to this third-generation family farm, which we bought from his parents back in 2021. It all stems back from the way my husband and I were raised growing up. Farm life, growing up in the rural area, knowing where we come from, having the ability to raise our own meat and vegetables. Ever since I was a little girl, my family and I would spend our days outside, my dad doing yard work, tinkering with his hands, or in the garden after all the farming. And if you ask my husband, he would say his dad is quite similar. Growing up, my dad farmed with his brothers, which now over time has evolved into my brothers helping him run the farm. It amazes me to see the knowledge I've gained over the years to what was once just us as little kids, just playing in the corn or running around the farm while my dad and uncles farmed. Watching my dad and how much time and effort he and his brothers at that time put in never seemed to faze me, because he was in his element, as were they. Growing up, we learned a lot what it took, and eventually over time, we started to help where we could. You know, every rural kid's summer dream job, picking rock and pulling weeds in the field, that was us. Man, did we make some good memories. He has a very hard work ethic, and I admire that. Some would say maybe my siblings and I all gained a little piece of that from him. Knowing it was something he enjoyed, he always seemed to know what he was doing. But as a child, I would always ask questions. How do you know when to plant? When do you have to harvest the potatoes? When will the onions be ready? Why did you space them that far apart? How do you get them through the winter? Those why questions as a child continued into my young adult life, like the time when I called him and asked him how to can. I remember it clearly. I was living in an apartment, and my now husband and I wanted to make jelly. That was just the beginning, which was also the same year we bought tomato plants and attempted to grow them on our apartment deck. I remember being so proud of those few plants we did start. And I still find myself calling him when it comes to planting, gardening, or canning. I always have a million questions, and he always has answers along with patience when it comes to those questions and answers related to gardening and farming. Some will find farming, gardening, homesteading intimidating and not want to start, period. As in today's world, we are given the ability to buy everything at the store. And if that's not a choice, you can more than likely find it online, which has its perks and convenience, yes. I'm a sucker for door delivery as well as grocery pickup. Being a mom of 4, it's been my go-to. But I would say it's available to complement our lifestyle. And while that may appeal to most, we are what some would say unconventional, opposite, self-starters, and knowing what we want and going for it. Even if we feel the nudge to get that certain animal, get it. This I'll touch later on in a podcast when it comes to me getting my 2 dairy cows. That's a good story. Though I do enjoy going out to eat and not cooking for myself or our family and just grabbing those easy meals like corn dogs and chicken nuggets for the kiddos, because we all deserve a little break from meal planning once in a while. The taste and preparation, our own dishes, doesn't compare. Doing the research and choosing the best for our family is what keeps us in this lifestyle, which includes canning, putting up our food and our meat, choosing a healthier option versus store-bought convenience, and knowing the hours and time it takes, but having those littles right there with us. We tend to spend our weekends outside as family, taking care of the garden and animals, stopping in for lunch, and then going back outside wrapping up the night milking after the youngest is in bed, or even having that not-so-traditional schedule of bedtimes and wake-ups. And then in return, teaching them life experiences and life lessons and seeing the joy in their face, such as when they're able to take over picking eggs and running into the house with those few cartons for breakfast. Mom, I got the eggs. As I watch from the door cringing, don't drop them. Or recently, our oldest daughter, who is 6, was able to prep and start milking a couple dairy cows until I was able to hook up the milking system or whatever, and I did chores on the side. I just remember hearing, Mom, I'm just like you. She was smiling and so much in her element. It just made me happy. These are the moments we struggle with, letting them go and allowing independence, whether it's carrying the eggs or hoping they don't drop them, or milking the cow and having that fear that they're going to get kicked, or maybe even just letting them plant the pepper plant, knowing the hole might not be deep enough and the plant might die. But in return, it's teaching us the reason why we're here, why we're doing what we're doing. This is our why, our children. They are the reason. Yes, leading into this, in the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned my childhood as well as my husband's, how our childhood had shaped us and in return brought us to this lifestyle today. Moving to the country, having 4 littles, raising all the vegetables and animals we can, but they are truly our why. We truly can heal from the inside out, provided proper nutrition. The food we raise, the vegetables we grow, while balancing life offerings and teaching our littles right alongside us. And some might be wondering what keeps us from going back to the lifestyle we left. I think this truly lies in what you believe in. And this is what will be different to many and might ruffle some feathers. But as we mentioned earlier, or I per se, we are unconventional, opposite self-starters and knowing what we want and going for it. It's knowing what you believe in, and in this case, it's what is being allowed on our store shelves, the food labels, and what is being considered are advertised as healthy. In my opinion, this isn't real food. It's overprocessed. It's a loaf of bread with 15 different additives and chemicals. That, depending on the brand, won't even mold if left in humidity and temperature-fluctuating fish houses for over a year. It's the wax-covered apples and the cucumbers, the chemicals we can't pronounce, the dyes, etc. Knowing what is regulated by the CDC and the FDA but banned in other countries and made illegal, but here, they still somehow allow it in the US. I don't agree with this. Bottom line, yes, I do go shopping at the store, but over the last few years, we have made some huge shifts, and that has made all the difference. It's choosing simpler ingredients, less preservatives, and healthier choices. While a lot might jump on how time-consuming it might look on the outside, looking in, it's the opposite. It's a way of living while balancing. And while those may choose the conventional route, we simply choose otherwise. So, with that being said, I'll end it here. And know if you ever have questions regarding homesteading, canning, growing, raising incredible vegetables and animals, know we're here to support you and encourage you while we learn right along beside you. So this wraps up our episode and my intro. We sure do appreciate all of you listening and joining us for this podcast journey. Follow us on Instagram as well as Facebook. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and listen along. And remember, the price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it. And be sure to follow along and not miss a single episode where we grow roots and talk dirt. Stay tuned. See you next time, friends.